Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So during July of 2021, the Summer Olympics were taking place in Tokyo, and that was happening 1 year after being canceled by the COVID-19 pandemic. And you may remember that the biggest star of the Summer Olympics in Tokyo was Simone Biles, the gymnast for the United States. And she was competing and everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, she withdrew from the competition. And of course, that got a lot of media attention. And she explained why. And she was dealing with some mental health issues, especially anxiety. And that brought a lot of media attention to mental health and mental health struggles. And that seems like a long time ago. It was actually less than 4 years ago. And many famous athletes like Michael Phelps and some NFL players and many famous actors and singers like Selena and Ariana Grande have come out and started to discuss more openly their mental health struggles. And so Ariana Grande obviously was already famous, but the movie Wicked put her into superstardom, and she talked about PTSD and depression that she had been dealing with. And with these athletes and these celebrities talking more openly about their mental health struggles, it actually helped to reduce the stigma attached to talking about mental health challenges. But unfortunately, many private school leaders are engaged in a secret struggle. And the secret struggle is that on the outside, they appear to be a confident leader, resilient and strong and courageous and brave, and that you can handle anything thrown your way and that you're this indestructible superhero. That's what we tend to portray on the outside. But many private school leaders on the inside are dealing with anxiety or depression or perhaps bipolar disorder or panic attacks or PTSD. They're dealing with mental health struggles. And I can only speak for myself. I know that there were years where I earned my Academy award every day for years. And, I can't let people see any chinks in my armor. I have to be Superman on the outside. And there was no way that I was going to talk about anything that I was struggling with my mental health with anyone other than my wife. Like, there was absolutely no way that I was going to talk to anybody. And we know that's not good. And I want to talk about this today and kind of shine a light on this issue. And so on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, we are going to discuss the secret struggle of mental health and private school leadership. And, if you're listening to this in real time, it's late May, early June, and sometimes in the summer, I think it's important to kind of get back to the basics of leadership. And I want to share with you a free resource that I think will help you do that. And it's called The 6 Things That Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader. And this guide is a 6-page PDF that can be a real game changer for you. And I guarantee you that if you do these 6 things, that the teachers at your school will be happy to follow you. And you can grab this at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. This is free. for you just to say thank you for listening to the podcast. And again, this is called the 6 things that every private school teacher wants from their leader. And you can get that at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And I also wanted to let you know, I mentioned that if you're listening in real time, it's late May, early June, and that over the past, I'd say about 3 weeks, that I've had several private school leaders that have been purchasing Parent Academy. Actually a coaching client in New Orleans just picked up a copy yesterday, and the reason for that is because they are proactively getting ready for teacher in service when the teachers return at the end of the summer. And I know that as you're wrapping up the school year, the last thing you want to think about is teacher in service. But you know, because I've been talking about it, that Parent Academy contains 4 teaching modules for you, where I take everything I've learned about working with parents and put it into 4 modules for you. But also, importantly, it contains 2 45-minute plug-and-play teacher PDs. And these are 45-minute video webinars. There's a 27-page printable notebook with guided notes and discussion questions. And so if you're looking for something that will help get your teacher in service off to a great start, but also will tee it up for a great year and great years in the future of teachers and them improving their relationships with the parents at your school, that's actually possible. And so I'd love for you to check that out at theprivateschoolleader.com/parentacademy to learn more. And the feedback has been really good from teachers and from administrators, school leaders that have used the plug-and-play PD. And I'd love for you and your teachers to be able to use this as well. So just check that out, theprivateschoolleader.com/parentacademy. And then lastly, I want to give you one more free gift. Speaking of parents, you know, they can cause us a lot of stress and anxiety, unfortunately. And just a few weeks ago, I created a new resource called The 4 Worst Things That Parents Believe About Your School and How to Change Their Minds. And I know that for me, I just get really frustrated and upset when parents believe things about our school, my school, that just isn't, that it's not true. However, parent perception is reality. And so I've created this PDF guide that will take you through 4 really, really problematic things that parents probably believe about your school. But most importantly, I'm going to teach you how to change their minds. And so you can grab this free guide at theprivateschoolleader.com/believe. It's called The 4 Worst Things Parents Believe About Your School and How to Change Their Minds. And again, that's free for you over at theprivateschoolleader.com/believe. So we're talking about the secret struggle of mental health challenges for private school leaders. And the way I want to divide this up is we're going to talk about a few statistics, and then we're going to get into just briefly why private school leaders keep this a secret, and then talk about the paradigm shift that's needed to get the help that we need, and then just a few basic strategies as to, okay, well, what do I do now? And then provide some resources for you. So I was looking up some statistics, and the National Association of Secondary Principals, NAASP, did a survey in 2022, and I just have 3 statistics here that I want to share with you. And the first is that 50% of school leaders claim their stress level is so high that they are considering a career change or retirement. So that's probably not a surprise to you. 63% of school leaders said that they are strongly considering leaving education in the next 1 to 5 years. So I just want you to pause for a minute, because I think that sometimes we just put our head down. We just figure this is my life now, and this is my job, and this is just how it goes, and this is what I do. But I'm not sure how many other careers there are where 63% of the people in that career are strongly considering leaving that career in the next 1 to 5 years. And so that just shines a light on how much stress and the expectations and the pace and the exhaustion and the cortisol being pumped into your brain and your body. And so I just thought that was a surprising statistic. And then the third one from this specific survey is that 73% of school leaders report that they needed help with their mental health or emotional well-being within the last year. 73% school leaders report they needed help with mental health or emotional health in just the past year. And then just one statistic from the NAIS State of Independent School Leaders survey from 2021. The question was, I want to leave education and go into another field. And the response was 45% of administrators say they think about that some of the time, and 4% said that they think about it all of the time. So again, a different survey, different organization, 49% of admins in school leadership are thinking some of the time or all of the time about just getting out of education altogether. And so I just think that it's important for us to remember, and I'm just going to tell you something that you already know, and that is that this is a really, really hard job. It's really complex. All the decisions, all of the pressure, all of the expectations, all of the things that you're juggling, all of the different things that you're responsible for, and the pace. And it's just sometimes it gets to be too much. And I know that not every person that's listening to this is dealing with mental health challenges, but many are. And so that's why we're going to lean into this and talk about it today. So first of all, why do we as private school leaders keep this a secret? You know, I titled this episode, The Secret Struggle. Why do we keep it a secret? Well, in general, there's a stigma attached, and I know that I said that in the past several years that more and more celebrities and athletes are talking about their mental health struggles, and that's helping to destigmatize mental health issues. But I also said that unfortunately, I think that destigmatizing talking about mental health challenges among private school leaders is lagging significantly behind the celebrities and the athletes and the maybe even some other people in other positions because of a few things. And I think that the reason that we keep it a secret is, first of all, number one, is we don't want to be perceived as weak. You know, there's this belief, and I've had it, that seeking help is a sign of weakness or incompetence or lack. And if you're a leader of a school, you're a leader of a division, you don't want to be perceived as weak by your team, by the parents. And so the first reason we keep it a secret is because of a perceived weakness attached to mental health challenges. And number two is kind of similar, but I call this the hero leader complex. You know, we feel like we have to be that hero leader. We have to be invincible. And, you know, like Superman, nothing can hurt Superman. Bullets or fire or whatever, you know, Superman's going to just bounce back. And that's how we feel often like we have to be when it comes to our leadership. And we just have to be this like pillar of strength for our teachers and for our students and for the parents, and you know, this invincible hero. So this hero leader complex, well, that doesn't align very well with the vulnerability of someone else knowing that you're struggling with your mental health. Another reason that we keep it a secret, number three, fear of repercussions. And this was certainly true for me. You know, we have concerns about job security or our professional reputation. Let's face it, we worked hard to get the reputation that we've earned. And we don't want something to negatively impact that. And so some of it's reputational, but some of it is also, it's like, all right, is this going to cause the board chair or cause the head of school to perceive that I can't handle this job, and a concern about job security. And another reason that it's a secret struggle is often, quite frankly, is a lack of resources. Some of our schools, whether they're small schools or larger schools, just have limited access to some kind of mental health support for employees in general or school leaders in particular. And so sometimes maybe those of us that are interested in trying to get some help, that maybe that help is not readily available. And then just a couple more reasons why I think that we keep this struggle a secret is that there's shame attached to not being able to handle the hustle culture. So we know that in America that entrepreneurs who hustle and have been glamorized and have become celebrities, and sleep is equated with laziness. And if we as school leaders can't handle the hustle culture, and we can't tough it out, or we can't just rub some dirt on it and just keep showing up and keep going and keep going and keep going, then there's shame attached to that. And then finally, I think the last reason that I could think of why we keep it a secret if we're struggling with our mental health is that just in general, as school leaders, we don't ask for help. And so we talk about on this podcast how sometimes we're not very good at delegating. We're certainly not good at asking for help, and that's just with things that are on our task list or things that we have to do or things that we're super busy with, especially in the spring. Well, if our tendency, our predisposition is to not ask for help, then we're probably not going to ask for help when we're struggling with something to do with our mental health. Okay, so there needs to be a paradigm shift if we're going to get the help that we need. And so I'm just really thinking about, well, what is going to move you? What is going to move me from where we are, maybe struggling with mental health, to actually doing something about it? What does that paradigm shift actually look like? So I think it comes down to finding something that matters more to you than your shame over this issue, or finding something that matters more to you than your excuses about why you're not going to get help. And I realize that's easy to say, and I can only speak from my own experience. And, back in episode 1, I actually just talked about this last week on the podcast, but back in episode 1, I told you my story and how I was way overweight and I needed to lose weight, and nothing was really helping me to do that. And I was making, just these resolving with myself that I was going to lose weight, and that didn't work. And then I made a New Year's resolution and was very determined, and then that didn't work. But then I went and got my annual physical, and my doctor looks at me and is like, "Hey, Mark, you have 3 daughters, right?" Yeah. And he looks me in the eye and he says, "Well, you're obese. You are at risk for high blood pressure and diabetes." And he's like, "Do you want to walk them down the aisle if they get married?" And then I lost 60 pounds in the next 9 or 10 months. And so something all of a sudden became more important to me than all the reasons why I wasn't doing what it took to lose the weight. And also, again, I can only speak from my experience, but I've been there when it comes to some mental health challenges, and whether it was anxiety or some depression, especially attached to the grief of losing 3 sisters in 3 years. And listen, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you are a human being. You're not a robot. You have a very, very difficult, emotional, draining job. And sometimes you need help. Sometimes I need help. And I want you to think about it this way, okay? I want you to pretend for a minute. Think about your school. Let's pretend for a minute that there's a 6th grade girl, sweet girl, really nice, good attitude, hard worker, just really well-behaved kid. And unfortunately, this 6th grader, she breaks her ankle, okay? And she comes to school and she's got this cast on. And in my school, my most recent school, the middle school was on the 3rd floor. And if a kid came in like that, of course, we would let them use the elevator. Well, I want you to pretend that at your school, that your middle school is on the 3rd floor. And you just decide, well, she can't use the elevator. You know, as a private school leader in your school, you decide this girl, this 6th grade girl with a broken ankle in the cast, she can't use the elevator. She has to use the stairs. And oh, by the way, today is field day. And she has to participate in the 50-yard dash, or we're going to send her home. Well, that's ridiculous, because you're going to make sure she gets the help that she needs, that she can use the elevator, and that she's going to have either her crutches or those little scooters. She's got a cast on her ankle, which is actually also helpful to set the bone and to help her to heal. And these things are temporary forms of help that will get her from the broken bone to the bone healing. The elevator, the crutches, the scooter, the cast, the physical therapy afterwards, all of it is temporary help to get her from point A to point B. Well, seeking help for our mental health is temporary help to get us from point A to point B. And just as ridiculous as it sounds to tell a 6th grader with a broken ankle that they have to take the stairs and run the 50-yard dash, that's kind of what we're doing when we don't get help, when we're struggling with our mental health. And here's another thing that I hope will illuminate this for you as far as this paradigm shift. Back in the 90s, for whatever reason, I would get bronchitis once a year during the wintertime, like clockwork. And I would go and get an antibiotic at the doctor and, take that for 5 days, whatever, and then my bronchitis would go away. But one year, I was so busy with coaching and everything at school that I actually didn't get around to getting the antibiotic, or I didn't get it quickly enough, and my bronchitis actually turned into pneumonia. So I want you to think about if every year in the 90s during the winter when I got bronchitis that I never went to get the antibiotic. And then when it turned into pneumonia, then I would never go and get that taken care of. Well, I wouldn't be here. And so my point is that when a thing happened and there was something available in the form of a Z-Pack or take, one a day for 10 days or whatever it was, the antibiotic, something was available that would help, I went and I did the thing. And so I know that mental health is more complex than a broken ankle or bronchitis, but hopefully you see where I'm going here is that because of all of the reasons that we keep it a secret that I mentioned before, there's help available, but we need to change our mindset about how important it is to get the help in order for us to do this. And so I want to just conclude by talking about a few strategies that can help. And then I'm going to put a bunch of resources in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 137. So strategy number 1 is to pause and acknowledge. So pause and acknowledge that it's okay to go through stuff. I always say that everyone has stuff, it's just different stuff. And that's true for kids, and it's true for adults. So, for example, like just with your teachers, one of them might be dealing with financial struggles. Maybe their partner or spouse just lost their job recently, and also they have an elderly parent living with them that's in a hospital bed in the middle of their living room floor. Okay? Also, it could be that a different teacher at your school, the stuff they're going through is that they just had a baby, and they've also got 2 kids under the age of 4 that are older siblings at the house, and that's a lot of stuff going on there for them as far as that season in their life. Everyone has stuff, it's just different stuff. Think about our students at school. And this one becomes dysregulated quickly, and this one has ADHD, and this one is gifted math super genius legitimately, and just all of these things. Everyone has different things. Well, I think the first step is that as private school leaders, and more importantly as human beings, that we need to pause and acknowledge that it's okay to go through stuff. And that at different times in our life, we're going to go through different stuff. Everyone has stuff, it's just different stuff. We have to just pause and acknowledge that it's okay to go through stuff. And then number 2 is to prioritize. Prioritize that there's only a couple of things that you only have one of. Let me explain what I mean. You could get another car. You could get another house. You could even get a different job. For that matter, a different career. But there's only one you. And there's only one spouse, or there's only one family. And so, if we're going to prioritize, are we going to put what people might think of us in front of our own mental health and physical health? Are we going to put what other people think of us and the reputation and the shame and the things that I mentioned before? Are we going to put that before our family? And so I realized that for me, and I don't want to be a hypocrite here, I just want to be honest. For me, for a while, the answer was yeah. I put shame and fear and superhero leader complex and prioritize that over myself and over my family. But then eventually I did get help. And so we're going to pause and acknowledge, we're going to prioritize, and then we need to change the story that you need to change the story that you're telling yourself. And so what I mean is to go from this story of, if you're struggling with something to do with mental health, just change the story from shame and lack and guilt and I'm broken and that there's something wrong with me, if that's the story you're telling yourself, to change it to lots of people go through stuff and I can get better if I ask for help. So I want to repeat that. Change the story that you're telling yourself from a story of shame and lack and guilt and I'm broken and there's something wrong with me, to the story that lots of people go through stuff and I can get better if I ask for help. And then just 2 more strategies. See what help your school offers. And there's 2 big things that I'm thinking of. One is your EAP, your Employee Assistance Program. Many schools have it. I've talked about it before on the podcast, that the EAP at my school was sort of the entry point for me to be able to get counseling, grief counseling, It was very convenient. It was over the phone. I didn't have to go somewhere and fight traffic and find parking and be on time for an appointment. That after all of that hassle, I could just talk to the grief counselor on the phone for 50 minutes. Employee assistance program at your school, see what your school offers, and sometimes it's, at least in my experience, it's available, it's convenient, it's covered. And even if you don't have coverage through the school, most schools, the employee assistance program covers all the employees because you work there. So see what your school offers in the way of the employee assistance program. And then the other thing that your school offers and is FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, and that's a law if you have over 50 employees and if you work full time, more than 15, I think it's 1,500 hours a year, and you work way more than that. And FMLA means that your job is protected if it's a qualifying event, and typically, a mental health issue would be a qualifying event if you need some time off, if you need some help to get some help, if you need some time to get some help. And so just, again, I'm not an expert on these things, and obviously you need to look into that yourself with regards to what your school offers, but it also is just something to keep in mind. EAP, Employee Assistance Program, FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. And then finally is to get what you need. And that's through your hospitalization. Is it some therapy? Is it maybe some meds? And you're like, well, my coverage isn't very good, or maybe you don't have coverage. Then I think it's time to look into the Affordable Care Act, to look into local mental health resources in your community. There's online resources like BetterHelp.com. I don't know too much about BetterHelp.com. I just see it advertised, and I see that it's pretty well rated, and it's just this certified therapist online. And I don't know if that would be covered by your insurance, but maybe if you looked into that or something similar, that it's something that would be an affordable option for you, and it's on Zoom or it's on the phone. And just, again, get what you need. And as I said before, I'm going to put a bunch of resources in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 137. And some of those are some basic things like links to previous podcast episodes about how to regulate your autonomic nervous system, what to do when you're feeling overwhelmed, things of that nature. But then some of them also are links to some specific things like findtreatment.gov and national helpline numbers and websites, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, crisis text line, things of that nature. And so I just will have those linked for you in the show notes, but the key here is to get the help that you need. So what are the big takeaways from today's episode? Why do we tend to keep it a secret? Perceived weakness, superhero complex, fear of repercussions, lack of resources, shame that you can't handle the hustle culture, and that we have a tendency to not ask for help. What's the paradigm shift that will move us from where you are to do something about it? Find something that matters more to you than your shame and your guilt and your excuses. And remember that there's only one you. And strategies that can help: pause and acknowledge that it's okay not to feel okay, to prioritize. Again, there's only one you. And change the story that you're telling yourself. See what help your school offers and get what you need. So your call to action for this episode is that if you're struggling with a mental health issue, or maybe you're not sure what's going on with you, is to talk to the person that you trust the most in your life and ask them to help you. If you're struggling with a mental health issue, or you're not sure what's going on with you, is to just take the step. The most trusted person in your life, talk to them and ask them for help. So I want to wrap it up by reminding you about the free guide that I want to give you as help to get back to the basics of excellent private school leadership. This is called the 6 Things Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader, and you can get that at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And then also a quick reminder that that Parent Academy is something you can check out at theprivateschoolleader.com/Parent Academy. And I really believe that this can be a game changer for your teachers, and especially during the summer, if you get Parent Academy and then you get all ready to show one or two or both of these 45-minute PDs to your teachers when they come back at the end of the summer for the teacher in-service. And, I just want you to think about what could it be like if your teachers at your school had better relationships with the parents at your school. And so that's possible. That's the feedback we're getting from schools and teachers and school leaders who've used Parent Academy. And I just want you to check that out at theprivateschoolleader.com/Parent Academy. And I'd love to hear from you. My email address is mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. If you need a pep talk or advice or event session, whatever the case might be, just if you've gotten value from the podcast, I'd love to hear about a strategy that you're using, or maybe your biggest pain point right now, and maybe that could be an upcoming episode on the podcast. And also, if you would rate the podcast and write a review wherever you listen, that helps the algorithm push this podcast out as suggested content for people all over the world. Private school leaders in 66 countries are listening to the podcast, and it's pretty cool that you can help be a part of that. And if you get value from the podcast, I just would appreciate it if you would share the link with another leader in your life or a rising leader at your school. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I appreciate you so much and all the hard work that you've done all year long at your school. Thank you for taking some of your precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.